Oh my gosh.
It's so close.
Hi everyone, my name is Joe Barnard, and can we real quick just get a big round of applause for the Echo rocket here for handling an incredibly high roll rate during this test. Roll rate is when the rocket spins around just like this, and it is really hard to keep things on course and on track when the rocket is spinning like that. So big round of applause in the comments down below for Echo. Good job, buddy. You tried really hard. Just for comparison, this is the real-time footage. That is not sped up at all. This test reminds me a lot of the CRS-16 mission from SpaceX, where they sent a bunch of gear up to the International Space Station, and when they tried to land their booster, one of their grid fin pumps stalled, resulting in a huge spin on the rocket as it was falling down. But their control laws and their guidance system was robust enough that it could handle it and basically keep the rocket upright at least, although it didn't hit the landing pad. But it's really hard to control these vehicles when they're falling, and if they're doing like a super fast barbecue roll, that's not really the term for it, but if they're rolling really fast on the way down, if you think about it a little bit, it's actually very difficult to keep things on course and upright, especially when you're using thrust vector control. For a little bit of comparison here, by looking at the gyroscope values from today's test and the last test back in May, we can see how much faster this vehicle was rolling on the way down. So back in May, Echo landing test number 4 had a roll rate of about 60 degrees per second average. We can see that from the gyroscope data, and yesterday's test, that's when it actually happened, was 200 degrees per second. So it was really cruising, it was rotating very fast, and what ends up being tricky is that the servos that are in the thrust vector control system, right? We've got the spent motor here, but the servos that move this thing around, that move the motor around, they have trouble keeping up when the vehicle is spinning that fast. There's a little bit of mechanical slop in there, and so it's just very hard. Let's move on to some other parts of the flight though. In my opinion, Echo landing test number 5, that is this test, is actually not quite as good as Echo landing test number 4. It doesn't seem like we were as close to landing this time as we were last time, and that's okay. As scientists and engineers, our job isn't to make the test look good. Our job is to test so that we can learn things, and there's a lot to learn from today's flight. So jumping right in here, the first problem comes with as the UAV is lifting up the rocket. As the vehicle is ascending, the UAV stopped holding its position via GPS, which is interesting. I've never really had this trouble before, and it's probably just some setting or erroneous value that I left in the settings for the UAV, but as it drifts to the side, we start to accumulate a little bit of speed in that direction, and the vehicle also starts to swing back and forth very slowly. And we just kind of got unlucky with where it separated, because when the vehicle separates, there's a large, basically moment on the vehicle, a rotational moment, which starts to pitch it over as it's going into free fall. In the past, I've had issues with the vehicle accumulating roll as it's hanging from the UAV, and that's sort of where we get roll issues. But this doesn't seem to be the case today. What actually seems to be happening is a confluence of factors that basically increase our roll rate on the way down. So if we look really close at the UAV separation point, we don't see the vehicle rolling, but as soon as it starts to fall, when it tilts over like that, it seems like we have some asymmetricness on the vehicle. This could be due to cameras on the outside, it could be due to missing screws, or perhaps this red wire on the side. You know, the mass moment of inertia on the roll axis of the vehicle. I'm sorry I'm using a lot of words, fancy words here, but basically it's very easy to roll the vehicle, so it doesn't take much asymmetricness as the vehicle is falling for it to start rolling like that, or rolling like this. And that's, I think, where our main source of roll comes from on this rocket. And then a secondary source of roll is then once we fire up the motor, I believe there's probably a little bit of just nozzle imperfection in the rocket motors that I use. And this is okay. I've seen it before in flight, so we probably accumulate maybe 10 to 50 not meters per second, degrees per second of roll on the vehicle from the motor actually burning. I believe there might be one other factor contributing to the roll rate here, and that's the thrust vector control movement. This is a little bit hard to think about conceptually about how this actually works with conservation of momentum. But as we gimbal this little solid rocket motor at the bottom, if we're using all 5 degrees of gimbal range, if we're really pushing it back and forth a lot, we can impart tiny little torques on the vehicle along the roll axis. And I say if, as if we didn't use the whole gimbal range, but let me tell you, this thing was gimbaling hard all the way down. If you look at this plot right here, you can see the TVC movements on the X and Y axis, and we're basically completely saturated through the whole flight. I forgot to mention this while recording, but the horizontal movement control software that I've been working on and implementing on Echo is actually a big part of the reason we see these really aggressive corrections. Obviously the roll plays a big part here, but the reason you see Echo pitching and yawing so aggressively is that it's actively trying to null out its horizontal velocity. And we can see this in the flight data as the set point moves back and forth on the X and Y axis, trying to make sure the vehicle doesn't slide side to side. So it's very hard for the control system to keep up, and we're getting these like coning effects, and we've got some pitch-yaw coupling going on. Overall, in terms of guidance and control, this is a really messy flight. A lot of it is luck, some of it is just ill preparation, some of it is, external factors. Now there's a good thing that we can pull out of this crazy TVC gimbaling. Obviously, it's suboptimal guidance and control, it's suboptimal stability, but we can learn something pretty interesting from it, and we can confirm something that I thought was possible, and it seems like it is. So a while ago, I thought of an idea where you could throttle a solid rocket motor by gimbaling it really, really fast back and forth around the point that you want to point the TVC mount. This is a related test that I ran a while ago to find the maximum bandwidth or actuation rate in the TVC mount. That is, how fast can we actuate back and forth before we start to lose resolution? So basically, like, you have a desired orientation, let's say 2 degrees in this direction, and instead of just pointing your gimbal mount, just pointing your motor at 2 degrees, you gimbal it a little bit around 2 degrees or something like that. And by doing that, you induce things called cosine losses. They're very easy to calculate. You do the force acting on the rocket multiplied by cosine of the gimbal angle, and that will give you basically, or sine, I get them mixed up. You lose a little bit of energy to pushing this exhaust to the side instead of firing it straight through the center of mass. And we see this work during this flight, because we hit the ground. We have a hop instead of a drop this time. I don't think I burned the motor late. In fact, I slightly raised the altitude at which the motor was supposed to burn this time. And based on the z-axis acceleration on the vehicle, we can tell that the motor's performance is nominal, and it is in really good, basically, agreement with all of the other thrust curves before. So the motor was performing nominally, we can confirm that, which means that we are legitimately getting cosine losses from gimbaling the motor this much, which is why we hit the ground instead of hovering just above it. So we're getting really into the precision here, and it's hard not to get super excited about it. Moving on before I spiral into oblivion talking about cosine losses, one of the other things that's noteworthy from this flight is the legs deploying quite a bit later than they usually do. Usually I set the legs to deploy about halfway through the burn, although in all actuality they actually are set to deploy at an altitude. So I lowered that altitude way down so the legs deploy right at the last second. And this is because in the last landing test we saw that high shock and high vibration from those legs folding out actually causes a little bit of trouble for our sensor readings. It's just like a hard thing on the flight computer. And so I delayed that leg deployment. That's why we see them fold out closer to the ground. Speaking of legs, by the way, one of the comments that was pretty prevalent in the last video is people noticing that there's a significant bounce when the vehicle touches down. Now, of course, the bounce in today's flight is primarily due to the motor just continuing to burn. It's less of a bounce and more of a just redirection. But speaking of legs, I have slightly modified my current leg design so that they fold into the vehicle a little bit more. And it's hard to describe without actually flipping them out. So let's just do it. There's 2 and 4. Essentially, the most structurally integritious, basically the strongest part of these legs is the strut right here. This is a full solid piece of plastic, and it does not bend very much. So when the vehicle touches down, if we have a straight leg, we essentially, we have all of this room for the straight leg to flex. But if we pre-flex the legs, which is what I did, I say if as if I didn't do it. If I pre-flex the legs, you basically get right to the point where the legs are the strongest. So this is like a dead simple redesign. And so that's one of the improvements that I made for today's flight, or today's test. I also love that it actually folds into the vehicle much better. The side profile just looks a lot cooler. And especially when we start to combine the launch and landing programs, it's just going to make things a little bit more aerodynamic. And speaking of the launch and landing programs, we have a couple of things to talk about here that are exciting to me. So this might sound like bad news at first, but I think we're probably only going to have 1, maybe 2 more Echo drop tests or Echo landing tests before we don't have any more. And the reasoning is because I'm feeling pretty ready to start to combine the launch and landing programs into basically full up launch and landing tests in one flight. So part of the reasoning behind this is a decent number of the errors that I keep getting and keep running into are just troubles with dropping from a UAV. It's not actually trouble with the landing part itself so much as it is trouble with the test procedure. So I could do one of 2 things here. I could fix the test procedure, or I could just say, well, screw it. It's my little space program, I'll do what I want, and it's time to do an all-up test. And spoiler alert, that's the route I've chosen. I actually need some feedback on this, by the way. So Echo is the landing series of vehicles, Scout is the launching series of vehicles. Although Scout was originally intended at the beginning of the BPS program to be the launching and landing vehicle, all up in one. So when we start these launch/landing tests, do we use Scout? Do we use Echo? I mean, I'm just talking about names here, but in terms of design, aesthetic, and names, do we use one of those? Do we make a new vehicle with a new name? What do you think? I'm serious. Like, just let me know in the comments. So that's about all I have now. I feel like most of you are familiar with how this vehicle works and what goes on, so I don't need to explain everything every single time. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments. If you have thoughts or suggestions, or maybe you're just really mad at me, or I don't know, just leave it in the comments. Thanks again to all the folks who support on Patreon. That's how all of this stuff is funded. Most of you know that already. But thanks to those folks, they make all these things possible. I've been posting test data and all the flight footage in the Patreon Discord, linked down below. That's all for now. Thank you very much for watching. May your skies be blue and your wind be low.